And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. This is Shawn Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Officer here, the Chief Sales Architect, if you will, of Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling. Now, here we believe that hope is not a sales strategy. And so we are committed every single day and each week to increase the pipeline performance of salespeople around the globe and the results that they get from their teams. So if you're new to this live stream series or this podcast, we share insights from the top minds in sales, the top trainers, speakers, authors, and those that are out there on the front lines selling. Now, it's very special when we can bring somebody in that's got decades in the sales industry and who also teaches salespeople how to think more systemically, more process-oriented about how they attack their pipeline, how they develop new prospects, and how they convert business. And so each single live stream that we do, each podcast, by the end of the show, I get to create a system with my guests that anybody listening can use, no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. And I know I'm going to have a lot of fun doing that today with Mr. Jeff Goldberg. So Jeff, welcome to the show, sir. I'm so excited to have you here.
Not as excited as I am to be here, Shawn. It's a pleasure.
Awesome, man. So for folks that don't know who you are, you're a self-described sales therapist. Tell me a little bit about that and kind of the journey that took you in life from what you were doing before you decided that you were going to be a maven and a guru in the world of sales.
Got it. Well, you kind of hinted that I'm old, and you're right. I've been doing this a long, long time. I'm actually so old that I sold Encyclopedia Britannica door to door back when books were actually real things.
Right.
I've been in sales for almost 48 years now. About 14 of those years were spent as a sales leader, sales manager, district sales manager, national sales director, working as an employee. I owned my own headhunting firm for about 5 years, and I shut that down and was looking for my next opportunity. And I answered a blind ad in the New York Times. I live in New York. And it turned out to be, for at the time, one of the largest sales training companies in America, which is since defunct. But that's where I learned a couple of things. One was the way to both sell and deliver sales training, and the other thing was that it was the job I'd been meant to do all my life, because I truly love to help people. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to paint myself out as an altruist. I like getting paid for what I do, but I really do love helping people. And I enjoy being the center of attention. I've got a background in theater and stand-up comedy, so I do love standing in front of audiences and helping them learn how to sell while I'm entertaining and engaging them. And I also am loving what I've focused on mostly these days, which is one-on-one and group coaching. It's a way I can impact people on a regular basis and help them to truly increase their sales. And I know that you and I have spoken more than once, and we both feel the same way. It's a responsibility that I enjoy, but it is a responsibility because when somebody tells you or me that they want to use our coaching or training services, I think they're saying, I trust you to help me feed my family. And I consider that pretty cool.
That is very cool. And it's a blessing that we get to do it in this world, and especially with the technology available now. It used to be, I know in the early days when you joined that sales training company, you needed to deliver training. You had to get on an airplane or you had to spend a lot of hours in the car. And now we get to do this virtually a lot of times in a way that is just, so impactful because we can kind of scale ourselves out, if you will. So let's talk about how the world of sales has changed, because not everybody that I bring on the show has the perspective that you do. So let's, I'd love to get your insight from when you started in sales with that sales training company and the way that you've seen sales evolve, shift, and adapt. What do you think the biggest one or two differences are? If you were going to talk to Jeff back when you first started and the Jeff that you are today, what has really shifted in the world of selling?
Well, let's start out with what hasn't shifted, if we could.
Good idea. Yeah.
Because a lot of things have shifted, certainly in the last, I'd say 10, 12 years. The internet changed everything. But a couple of things that haven't shifted are, one, that people still buy from people that they like, and two, that they buy from people that they trust. That sales is mostly, not all, there are some very transactional sales, but mostly a relationship game. And that has not changed in the last 50 years for the most part. You still have to find enough prospects. That hasn't changed. You still have to be speaking to enough people, because I don't care how good you are at selling. If you're not speaking with enough prospects, you can't close enough business unless, and I like the way you said, unless you're using hope as a strategy or luck as a strategy. And my experience is that the harder I work, the luckier I get. So those things haven't changed. The obvious thing that's changed is the use of social media in business development. That was it. Look, when I started out, it was knocking on doors and picking up the phone and cold calling people. And both those things still work. And I'll argue with any trainer or so-called guru or expert who says they don't. I personally don't want to do them. I love teaching other people to do them. But Shawn, I would rather live in my car than ever have to pick up the phone and cold call for work again. I do it once a month for about 20, 30 minutes just to make sure that what I'm teaching people is still working. But I don't want to do that. But so many other venues have opened up, like LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is a gold mine for salespeople if you just know how to use it effectively. Social media has been a huge, huge disruptor in the area of sales. And those who are embracing it and learning how to use it effectively are thriving. And those who aren't, I think, are kind of dinosaurs, which at this age and experience level, I should be, but somehow I'm not.
You're still kicking, man. So it's funny you mentioned, your love of, just getting into places and talking to people rather than cold calling. And so I was talking with a sales VP recently, a man I have a lot of respect for. He's, complete straight commission, has to, eat what he kills, nothing else. And he's done very well for decades. And he was sharing with me that in the last year, especially with COVID, it was changing a little bit before that, but COVID really made it apparent where you used to be able to just wander into a client company, sit down with Bob or Sally, talk to them and ask for an introduction. They'd physically walk you down the hall to maybe another decision maker or somebody that had a peer relationship that would be valuable to you. And you could spend hours inside of just one physical office building your business that way. And he said, Shawn, that started to change a little bit before COVID with social media, but COVID completely shut it down. And so he's had to really rethink the way that he prospects and rebuilds his business. For a lot of salespeople that aren't willing to adapt, thankfully this gentleman is, but for a lot of salespeople that aren't willing to adapt, I mean, that's the end of their career. So talk to us a little bit about what you've seen, because you're engaged and active in a lot of companies helping them improve their sales processes. What changed throughout COVID in the way that salespeople were selling and that, that now no longer worked, and they really had to think, wow, I have to rethink almost my entire prospecting model in order to make sure that I still meet number each month?
Well, the first thing I think is interesting is that this gentleman that you're talking about, this VP of sales, only started seeing it changing after COVID hit. Because
it was a little bit before COVID for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Before
9/11. Look, here in New York, 9/11 changed everything. And I'm not just talking about bringing down the World Trade Center. You can't get into most buildings in New York without, your driver's license and, a passport and, 3 letters of recommendation because the security is high. So I think it started shifting a long, long time ago. The thing that people have to be doing is doing a little bit more of what they were doing before to be effective, especially during COVID. I'm going to argue with people, though, and I get this discussion all the time. Jeff, you can't pick up the phone, call anybody. Everybody's working from home. Well, you can reach them. I had a conversation just this morning with a guy who called me up. He's a recruiter, a friend of mine, and he was kind of not crying or whining, but saying, look, I can't reach anybody. Nobody's hiring. And I call that head trash. It's not true that nobody's hiring. Are less companies hiring right now? Absolutely. Are less companies buying right now? In some areas, but Zoom's doing pretty well.
Netflix, they're doing well.
Yeah. So I think that anybody who's in sales right now has to be strategic, and they have to be thinking about, okay, the world has changed due to COVID, but what can I do to make something happen? Well, the first thing you can do is try to think about what type of industries are doing well, because it's not all of them that aren't. So one thing is to actually take a look at where is the money and be going after that. I think it's also important that they have some kind of a strategy, and I know you're big on that. You should be testing and measuring every method of prospecting and sticking with what works and that you're willing to do and getting rid of the rest. And I think that thing about willing to do is important because, I'm making up a number. Let's say there's 70 different ways to prospect, and I'm not sure that there's that many, but let's say there's 10 or 12 that salespeople could actually use. If you hate doing 2, I don't care how good you are at them, it's still going to come across. So if you're like me and you hate picking up the phone and cold calling, don't do that, but fill it in with other stuff. Because if you're not seeing enough prospects, and I'm repeating myself now, but if you're not seing enough prospects, you're screwed.
Well, and that's something that every salesperson needs to hear every day. If you're not seeing enough prospects, you have a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you wait for the phone to ring, it could be a very, very long time. Look, I'm so egotistical that I think my phone should be ringing every minute of every day with people saying, hey, Jeff, we need sales coaching or we need sales training. We know yours is the best company in the world and that you charge too little.
Right. Of course.
You don't get those calls. Do I get calls occasionally? But nobody calls up and says you're charging too little and your company's the only one in the world that does it. So you really have to be out there and make things happen. So it's a matter of finding what are the things that you actually are getting a good result with and then sticking with those and making sure that you're doing them regularly. I can't emphasize enough how consistent prospecting solves a myriad of sales challenges.
And let's dive into that, because the next question I had for you, which you might have just given me the answer to, and if so, that's great. Where do you see the salespeople that you're interacting with relying on hope just a little too much? Is it in hoping they remember to prospect?
How about everywhere, Shawn?
Okay.
I can tell you that, look, I will often exaggerate a story or a point to make a point, but this is no exaggeration. Every company I've ever walked into, every company I walk into now, every salesperson that calls me directly for coaching, they all have the exact same number one issue. And it's not that they're not asking for the order, which we all know every study says that's why most salespeople fail. It's they aren't successfully reaching enough qualified prospects. They just aren't seeing enough people. Look, you're amazing at selling. I'm pretty damn good at it myself. If I'm not talking to people, how am I supposed to close business?
Yeah.
Mind therapy, mind meld. It's not working that way. So we have to be doing a variety of things that have proven to be successful for us and doing them consistently, because there's a direct relationship between prospecting and getting paid. But the challenge is that you don't prospect today and get paid tomorrow. You prospect today and get paid somewhere way down the line. And I'll just give you a quick example. When I sell sales training, typically that's to larger organizations, I have a 4.5-month cycle between when I first speak to somebody and I get paid. Now, it only takes me 8 weeks to close a deal on average, but it's about 4.5 months before I see a check. And what that means is if I don't prospect today, I can't get a check 4.5 months from today. And if I don't prospect tomorrow, I can't get paid 4.5 months from tomorrow. Now, like you, I own my own business. So there's no big deal if I don't get paid a couple days in a row. I can actually go a few weeks. I could actually go a couple of months and I'm still okay. But I don't want to, because I've got 3 kids in college and the colleges want their money. So everybody needs to prospect consistently in a way that's working for them and brings them enough qualified leads or suspects that they can turn into prospects. And then, of course, the question becomes, how do I close those prospects?
And so let's talk about how people remember to do that and not rely on hope. And so I'm a salesperson. I understand at a gut level that I need to have more conversations with qualified people to start that cycle so that I can get paid in 4.5 months or 4.5 weeks or 4.5 years or whatever my sales cycle ends up being. So I sit down to my computer in the morning, or I'm in my car, I'm ready to roll. But yet I've got nothing that tells me what to do that day. I've got to try to remember, who were the 8 people that I spoke with last week? And was there a follow-up step with any of them? Did I promise them something that I did or didn't send them? Or that person that I meant to follow up with that I thought about last week when I was in the shower in a very professional way, no doubt. But I thought about when I was in the shower, I was like, I really need to reach out to that person. Well, how do I do that if I'm just sitting down and all of that stuff is floating through my head? I've got 1,000 options in front of me. It's like paralysis by analysis at this point. What do you advise salespeople do in that case?
Yeah, sounds like me. You've had this conversation with people more than once, Shawn. Yeah, so there's a couple things that I think are crucial there. The first one is what I call calendarization, and that simply means everything goes on your calendar. The one thing that I never, ever see on salespeople's calendars, and I inspect them all the time as a coach, show me your calendar, show me what you're doing. I need to see your activity. The one thing I don't see is prospecting time. And that's, to me, the most important thing that salespeople can do every single day. So it should be on your calendar every single day, because what we put on our calendar, we tend to do, or we're more likely to do, than things that we know are a good idea. So the first thing is make sure it's on your calendar, schedule it out. When I call somebody, if I've got to do a follow-up, that goes on my calendar too. Either in my CRM so that a reminder pops up, or on my actual calendar, I happen to put it on my calendar. So you want to who am I telling about systematizing? Yeah, systematize it.
Systemize it, yeah.
The other thing is have somebody who's going to hold you accountable. Because I co-authored a book called How to Be Your Own Coach, where we actually teach people how to coach themselves. But even in a book about coaching yourself, we say, look, left to our own devices, most of us are not going to keep our word to ourselves. Like, I'd rather break my arm than break my word to you, Shawn, because my integrity is very important to me. And my integrity is important not only when I promise you something, but when I promise me something. But I know that of the two, I'll work way harder to keep my word to you than I will to me, because I love me. And I'm a little easier on myself than I should be sometimes. And I'm a pretty disciplined guy. But still, you need somebody who's going to call you out on it. As a coach, I end every call with a commitment from my coaching client to how much prospecting they're going to be doing between this call and the next call. And by the way, it's not how much I tell them to do, it's whatever they're willing to commit to. And then I hold them accountable to it on the next call. And I use the word commitment a lot because I don't care what people hope for, dream about, what their wishes are, any of that. As a human, I care about that stuff. But as a coach, I only care about what will you commit to. And I have a semi-humorous method for getting people to make a commitment. So let's say you were my coaching client, Shawn. You told me that between now and the next call, say 2 weeks from now, you're going to make, I'm making this up, 10 cold calls a day.
Sure.
I'm going to then ask you, Shawn, are you going to make those calls or are you committed to making those calls? And if you'll actually use that word commitment, then I test you like this. Here's just one example. Shawn, I'm not sure if you know this, but I have a dog and my dog is a pug and I love my pug. I love my dog beyond belief. I love it as much as I love my own kids. You're telling me you're committing to making 10 cold calls a day for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to test that commitment right now. If you don't make the 10 cold calls a day and we get on the phone next time or on the Zoom call next time and you tell me you didn't do that, I'm going to kill my dog. Are you still committed, Shawn? That's so funny that you're laughing.
Oh, the ASPCA is hearing this, man. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, we're in trouble.
Everybody laughs at that, Shawn. But then I say, no, really, I'm going to kill my dog. So are you still committed? And when somebody says or I'll use my firstborn child or something like that.
Right, whatever.
I know it's funny. Of course, I'm not killing my dog. I'm not killing my firstborn child. I might kill the middle one. She's a little bit, no, I'm just kidding.
She's sassy. Yeah.
But yeah, you need a commitment. You need somebody who's going to hold you accountable because most of us simply are not accountable to ourselves.
Love it. Love it. And so there's the commitment that we make up our own chain of command, so to speak, because obviously a lot of the methodology we bring here to Bulletproof Selling came from those high performing teams that operate on the battlefield every day where, hey, hope is not a strategy for them either, because it doesn't mean lost sales. It means somebody's not coming home. So they've really got to build these systems and processes in. But for salespeople, it's not just reporting up to the chain of command, because a lot of salespeople listening to this or catching the live stream, they've got a boss, they've got a VP of sales, a regional manager that they have to report to be held accountable to. But oftentimes, the chain of commitment breaks down our sales process a lot sooner if we break a commitment that we make to a prospect or to a client especially. So let's talk about where you see salespeople really dropping the ball, because I could listen, and I do a lot of sales conversations, and there might be 4 or 5 commitments that a salesperson will make in the course of a 5-minute call. Promise to send you this, promise to follow up there, going to send you a calendar invite for that. I'll make sure that I research that and get you an answer. And if they don't fulfill any of those commitments along the way, suddenly the integrity of their entire organization is on the line, because as a prospect, I may be the only representative that you ever see from my company. And if I can't keep a promise to you, what does that say about what happens when you become a client? So I'd love to hear from you. Where do you see salespeople drop the ball on those client commitments that really happen before I ever have to report anything back up to my regional manager, my VP?
Yep. So the first one is that salespeople tend to overpromise and underdeliver, which is absolutely the opposite of what they should be doing. In fact, I always like to build in a little extra time for anything I tell a prospect that I'm going to do, knowing that I can do it quicker and it's going to make me look good. They're going to be very happy. If I bought an exercise bike several months back, I got an email from the company I ordered it from saying it would be here in 2 weeks, which I thought was very, very reasonable. Except, you know what? It showed up a week later. They exceeded my expectations. Now, here's the thing. I would bet my second-born child that Schwinn absolutely knew that they were going to be able to deliver that bike in a week, but they set my expectation properly, and they thrilled me. And I've told this story a million times to people who are trying to order a Peloton, which I think is 12 or 16 weeks out. They exceeded my expectations, and that's what we want to be doing. We want to make sure that we're making promises that we know we can keep, but make it look like they're a little like we're going to look better because we've under-promised and over-delivered. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, again, set up a system. When you're making promises, I take notes. I'm an old guy, so I still use physical notes. I don't like to type while I'm talking with prospects, on Zoom or anything else, because you have to be looking down. And so I jot down quick notes, and then I do things immediately. If I made a promise to you, 5 promises, like you said during our call, I either do them immediately or I put them on my calendar. Everybody, well, almost everybody with kids has a calendar on the refrigerator that says where you got to be and who's going to soccer practice, when you have to go to the dentist. Like, the dentist is the perfect example. Once, twice a year, you go to the dentist for your checkup. Hopefully you don't have to go more often, and it's on your calendar. Do you put it on there because you want to go to the dentist? I don't. He's a good guy. I don't want to visit him. I was just there the other day. And he said the dreaded words, Jeff, you've got a cavity. Great. But we go because we put it on our calendar. Look, I'm a fairly organized guy, and that's not how everybody is. But I suggest that the more organized you are in sales, the more systems you set up. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, like putting things on your calendar, putting them into your CRM. That's going to give you a greater likelihood of exceeding your prospects' expectations rather than letting them down. And I can tell you, as a buyer of things, I won't give you a second chance. You make a promise to me and you break it, I got no room for you, because there's too many other people out there. The competition's out there waiting to eat your lunch every day. You better be over-delivering.
Yep, love it, love it. And so it's let's build a system around this, because I really feel like that would help a lot of salespeople out, a way to capture all the promises they make during a call and over-deliver on those after the fact, so that prospect gets the idea, hey, this company's going above and beyond every step of the way. But as we start this, before we even jump into the system itself, we have to be able to make this really, really applicable to salespeople, that, because they're busy, right? And, they may say, yeah, I got 1,000 things I got to do in the course of a day. I got to build something else into my calendar now. That's a lot to ask anybody. So let's start with the correlation you see between over-promising and over-delivering and actually shortening that sales cycle or getting better results. Because if you tell me as a salesperson, if I can just do something that takes 30 seconds of my day and that increases my results by 20%, why would I not do that? So talk to me a little bit about where the correlation is between actually delivering on the promises you make that the prospect may not even remember after the call, and shortening that sales cycle, getting better results.
Well, one of the things you could certainly do is put it all into an email. Based on our conversation, Shawn, I promise to do this, this, and this, and I'll get this done by those times. Here's what you said you do. How does that sound to you? Or, and ask for agreement. So putting it into an email makes it real.
I got you. Okay. Yeah.
It also kind of forces you to now do it, because look, you're 100% right. We've all got 8 zillion things to do. When you and I get off this call, I'm sure you've got something else to do 5 minutes later, and so do I. But you've got to make the time to be organized. Life happens way too quickly. Look, I can't believe how old I am. Truly, I never. I'm a part of the generation that grew up saying, don't trust anybody over 30. Well, I'm more than double 30. Life happens very quick. I mean, for me, it's New Year's. And sales is a game where you've got to be juggling a lot of balls at the same time. So you better find some way to be organized. And by the way, there are professional organizers who will help you get organized if you don't know how to do that. There's another thing that's very useful where I live here on Long Island. It's called Google.
The Jujul. Yeah,
the Google machine. You can Google anything, how to be more organized, how to set up systems. It's not rocket science. And I always say that if it was rocket science, I couldn't do it. But I find that when I'm more organized, when I'm more systematized, when I know my metrics, there's some very basic things that make you more successful in sales besides your actual sales skills. And one of them is having systems in place that are going to prevent you from being your own worst enemy. Because here's something else I hear from everybody. And I always ask my clients, what's the thing that most keeps you from being more successful? The answer every time is me. And that's a very astute observation, because it's the same for me. I'm my own worst enemy. Most of us are.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to get out of our own way and stop being our own worst enemy and start being more systematic. Let the system run us instead of us.
Let's actually build that system then. So when we talk about systems here at Bulletproof Selling, it's about trimming that hope away from our sales strategy. So we use the acronym TRIM, T-R-I-M. So the first thing we have to have in this system, in order to bring a system into effect, whether I was on the battlefield or in a boardroom, it's a trigger. So what is the trigger that I need to really capture, that thing that activates this system, either that checklist in my CRM or gets me ready to respond to all of the things that I've promised a client after we've gotten on the phone or exchanged a LinkedIn message? What is the trigger for this for you that you would advise salespeople have, where now I need to bring the system into play? Is it the minute I hang up the phone, the minute an interaction happens? What really brings this thing up for us?
I hope I'm giving you the answer you're looking for here, because I think I know what you mean when a trigger. But for me, it's fear. It's fear.
Also, when you have fear that you won't be delivering on something, that's the trigger. Okay.
Yeah. Well, my commitment to my integrity and my commitment to feeding my 3 kids means I've got to be doing things the right way. So that fear of letting people down, which is a big psychological thing for me. I hate letting people down. I hate looking bad. And I've used the words a bunch of times, but my integrity truly is crucial to who I am as a human being. If I give you my word and I don't keep it, I think less of myself, and I don't want to think less of myself, which is why I don't make promises that I'm not pretty damn sure I can't keep. And then once I do, work incredibly hard to make sure I do keep those. So
And I love that you set up an emotional trigger first, and because without that, we're never going to use any system, right? We're just going to let it languish in our CRM or on a checklist sheet or something like that. So if the emotional trigger is there for me, and it's interesting that the trigger brought up fear, right? Because that is a trigger for a lot of people. It is for me. Once that happens, okay, so I've got the fear of not delivering on something. What is the thing that generates me to pull up that email, or the process behind the system? Is it a client conversation that just ended? Is it a social media message that I've just had where something has been promised? Where do I need to really pay attention to know I need to bring this system that I'm learning up right now, make sure that it works?
Yeah, so I think this is just part of who I am as a human being, just my nature. I'm wired up this way. I do stuff immediately.
Okay, so immediately after the call. Okay.
Immediately. Because look, I don't like chaos. It's just who I am as a human being. I like things very organized. I am one of those people that if you go into my closet, all my shirts are divided up by colors. I understand that it's a little bit anal, but it's who I am. So a lack of a system, a lack of organization actually hurts me almost.
Sure.
So I do things immediately. If I'm cooking, I'm cleaning as I'm going, because I don't want to have a sink full of pots and pans when I'm done. So it's getting things done immediately. Plus, there's just too many things going on, too many messages coming in, too much that I'm responsible for every minute of every day, that if I'll do this later on. Well, if it doesn't go on my calendar, then it'll get buried somewhere. So I want to do things, if I at all possibly can, right away. Another thing that works really well is to make sure that you never, ever leave for the day, whether you're actually leaving where you're working or you're just shutting down your computer because you're working at home. Don't leave without having your entire day planned for tomorrow. I live and die by my calendar. And every minute of the next day, well, people like you and me have to look out weeks and weeks in advance. But for most people, you can't leave without having the entire day filled up. And I include in that building in little breaks, because I think that's important to anybody. You're more successful when you build in. I read a book called The Power of Full Engagement that said you need a break mentally and physically every 90 to 120 minutes, not an hour break every hour and a half. You need a break. And that the top performers actually do that. They studied sports people. So to me, it's get it done immediately, or make sure you have a note somewhere that you can actually see it. Like I'm pointing to my monitor here. I use sticky notes. I have a whole bunch of sticky notes sitting right next to me. If I can't get to something immediately, I'll put down a note. Enter this in CRM as ASAP, and it goes up here where I can see it. The other thing is my calendar is open all the time, always. Now, I may have 70 other windows open, but my calendar is always there, and I really do live and die from. When we get off this call, it's going to be okay. What's the next?
Back to the calendar. Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. So we've got the trigger. The next part of this acronym, the R in TRIM, is to make it repeatable. So when we're on the battlefield and something works, I don't want to have to try to remember the 18 steps that kept us all alive. And in a sales situation, especially in delivering a promise to a prospect, I don't want to try to remember all of the things that I know work really, really well. Because like you said, just getting it done on time when you promise, well, that's the minimum barrier to entry here. I mean, that's like fogging a mirror. They expect you to have integrity at the basic level. If we're trying to over deliver on that, we need to make sure that we're sending the email with the agreements. We need to make sure that we're actually doing the research that we promised, that we're delivering it in a way that's attractive. I mean, all the things that really make us stand out from all the other people providing the product or service we have. So whether it's a checklist, whether it's a sequence of events that live as a task set in a CRM, how do you advise that people make this type of a thing repeatable so that I do all of the things that I know lead to success in delivering on those commitments? Not knowing what the commitments might be ahead of time, right? Every prospect conversation could deliver a very unique commitment at a very specific time, but I need a spot to organize all that for myself. How do you make this thing repeatable for salespeople and for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's like any other thing that you need to do and may not want to do. You have to create a habit. You've got to do. I think the perfect example, or one of them, is going to the gym. So if you've gotten out of shape, many times at the end, not you, Shawn, of course, but people at the end of the year, they'll make a New Year's resolution, which I'm not a big fan of. That's besides the point. I'm going to get into shape. I'm going to join a gym. So they join a gym, and they're going to go on January 2nd, not January 1st, of course, because we're still hungover. I don't know about you, but I'm still hungover. So you wake up on January 2nd and you don't want to open your eyes because, once you open your eyes, you got to get out of bed and put on your sneakers and go to the gym. And you finally pry your eyes open and, I can't even find my sneakers. But then you dig and you find them and, there's going to be, you've got a million excuses. And then somehow you force yourself into your car, you drive to the gym, you manage to get through the traffic and you work out. And it sucks. It's painful and it's work and you're dripping and, I can't believe I'm doing this. And the second day, guess what? It sucks.
It's just as awful. Yeah.
but about that third week, about that third or fourth week, it actually does become easier. I always say it's hard to get going. It's much easier to keep going. So you've got to force yourself those first few days or first couple of weeks to just do it, no matter what. Make a promise to yourself and get somebody who's going to hold you accountable if you need that, and just freaking do it. I love the Nike phrase, just do it.
Yeah, and then that sounds like it would be applicable whether 5 promises were made to a prospect in a conversation or 1. Just get it done. Get it on your calendar, get it, launch that task set, send the email with the, the mutually agreed to commitments, the follow-up step, get that next thing scheduled on the calendar, get the next research project you've got to do to deliver on that, the white paper poll, whatever that looks like, get it on the calendar. So we've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable. Now this part gets really interesting because if I really want to stand out, it makes sense that a lot of other salespeople are also over-delivering, under-promising and over-delivering. If I want to get better at this, like if I want my prospects at the end of a week to say, well, we talked to Shawn about these 3 things, he delivered on them, but he also gave us these other 12 things we didn't even expect. Like he really over-delivered, provided me some solutions to problems that I didn't even know that I had. How do I make sure that I'm improving the way that I deliver on my commitments to a prospect?
I love that. So there are 2 things. One is you make a commitment to yourself that you're going to be doing what Tony Robbins calls CANI, C-A-N-I, constant and never-ending improvement. It's like any other commitment. It's going to take work. So you've got to make a commitment. So you want to be committed to always improving. The other thing that I find works really, really well is to speak to your happy clients. Your clients are a great source of valuable feedback. And often the feedback that they'll give you is surprising. And I want to give you an example. I've been doing this a long time, as you know. And I recently had the great pleasure of sitting down with a client I've been working with for 2 years on a consulting engagement. There was training and coaching in there and consulting. And at the end of the 2 years, I'm sitting down with the EVP of sales and marketing, the 2 sales managers. There were 5 people in the room. The other 2 were sales managers also from a different division. And I was just going around the room, what went well? What could I have improved in? What did you like about working with me? What do you think you got out of it? That kind of thing. I want feedback. I always tell people, you don't need to pump me up here. I'm not looking for just, Jeff, you are great. I really want to learn and grow every single time. And the interesting thing that to a person, they all said that they liked best about working with me, which I had never thought of before, was, Jeff, the thing we like best about working with you was our people now have more confidence. Now, again, I've been doing this a long time. It never once occurred, not once did it occur to me that I give salespeople more confidence. Do I give them skills and techniques and tools and tips and strategies? Yup. Do I pump them up? Yup. Am I excited? All the things that I am? Yup. But it never occurred to me that I give them more confidence. So asking your clients for what they like about working with you, what you could do better, what you did well, is a great way to set that up.
Love it. Love it. So asking, go ahead.
I can promise you that every prospect I speak to now hears this. Well, one of the things that my clients tell me they like about working with me is that their salespeople have more confidence.
More confidence. Yep. Love it. And then for the prospects that you engage in this system with, where you over deliver and over promise, hopefully you can do both, to be able to ask them once they become clients, remember that interaction we had at the beginning. What did you like about that? What could we have done better? And to build that feedback into your next promise commitment system, if you will. I love it. So we've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable, we've got making it improvable. The final bit, and this is the one that a lot of sales managers are going to be interested in, how do we make this thing measurable? That's the M in trim. Is it tracking, if I had 10 conversations, that should have generated 10 at least singular commitments, maybe more though, and tracking, did I deliver on all 10 of those? Is that how you would advise salespeople measure this? Is it through conversion of prospects into clients? How do we really begin to get our handle on, hey, is this system effective? Because otherwise, why are we using it?
Yeah, well, once again, there has to be a system for measurement too. And you and I have talked about this before, and we're both in complete agreement. If you can't measure it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. There's got to be a measurement system to know of the activities that you're doing, of the promises you're making, of the things that you're doing. You've got to measure and see, are they actually being effective? Because we salespeople, and I'm not saying you salespeople out there, I'm talking about me and Shawn too.
Yeah.
We tend to go with anecdotal evidence or gut instinct. Here's what I think is going on, except what you think is going on may not be true. And the perfect example is when I met my ex-boss and he asked me about my personal numbers regarding cold calling. And I really had no clue, but I said, well, you know what? I think it takes 100 dials for me to get an appointment. Now, here's the thing. I said it takes 100 dials for me to get an appointment because that's what it felt like to me, because I despise cold calling. Now, I love teaching it, by the way. I just don't want to do it. So if that was true, if it really took me 100 dials to make one stinking appointment, I might as well make a big sign and go out on the expressway and stand there saying sales training and coaching here and wait for people to pull over. But it's
those are your odds.
That. Yeah. So he taught me the value of setting up measurement systems. And we used to use a simple tracking sheet with a pen and a piece of paper and putting tick marks on it and then transferring to an Excel spreadsheet. Most CRMs today, you can put all kinds of measurement systems in there.
Right.
So you've got to have some system in place to make sure that what you're doing is being effective. Otherwise, we're using hope as a strategy again, and it doesn't make sense to either of us, and I hope not to your audience either.
No, I'm sure it doesn't. No one listening to this, at least past one episode, is believing that hope plays a part in their system, or that it should. So we've got this whole system built. This is amazing for actually committing to a prospect on the phone and being able to over-deliver to it. That's really going to help with conversion, I know, on the tail end, or at least give them a warm fuzzy about us. So when they are ready to engage in our product or service, we're the people that deliver. And in my mind, there is no better measure of integrity than that. I may not like you personally, but if you over deliver every time, you're much more likely to get my business for sure. And hopefully you can be likable personally as well.
And here's something else. It's not hard to differentiate yourself when you do a good job, because customer service is the perfect example, which is not my area of expertise. I have other people that I refer that business to when clients ask for it. But every company says we give great customer service, except I'd like your audience to think right now about, of the companies that you deal with as a customer, how many of them actually deliver great customer service?
No, very, very few.
Very few. Exactly right. But there are a couple of standouts that we could I mean, look, Zappos, you ever deal with Zappos? Amazing customer service. I bought phone equipment from a company called Hello Direct. Amazing customer service. So just by delivering okay customer service, you stand out from the crowd for most of the time. And if you actually do go above and beyond, you're a winner. And that's what
every single time.
People want to be well taken care of.
They do, and I know, anywhere in your world. So you got a lot of systems and processes out there on your own. So tell people, how can we find out more about Jeff, the sales coach? Where does all that stuff live? So if people want to get deeper into your world, want to get on the phone with you, they can make that happen. How do we get into your atmosphere, man?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of ways. I have a website, of course. It's JG, like Jeff Goldberg, sales, SALES, pro.com. That's my email also, jeff@jgsalespro.com. My direct line is 516-608-4136. And as you know, Shawn, I have a Facebook group for salespeople called The Sales Pro Network. If you're old like me and you're on Facebook, just type in those 4 words, The Sales Pro Network. I founded that as a place to elevate the profession of sales. And it's a place where salespeople can come and share successes and challenges. There's a bunch of great coaches, not just me. I've invited a lot of my competitors to be there, and we're happy to help anybody. And as you know, every Friday at 10 a.m., I do a live interview with somebody just like you who can add value to the profession of sales. So all those places are great ways to find me. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out anytime. And I'm always happy to help. It's one of the ways I over-deliver. Look, if somebody's calling me 5 hours a day every day, we're going to have to talk about Jeff getting paid. But anybody in your audience who just has a question, something I can help with, my pleasure anytime. Because I believe what goes around comes around, and givers get.
Absolutely. And thank you for being so giving. If you haven't checked out the show that Jeff mentioned, I was a guest on there a couple months back, and Jeff has a way of extracting the gold out of everybody that he interviews. So I would recommend that you subscribe to that and make time to catch those episodes. So for us here at Bulletproof Selling, make sure that you are following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube for these live streams. And of course, the podcast that we produce from it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you can find podcasts. For more sales systems, of course, to help you build out better pipelines, get better results from your sales processes, check out bulletproof-selling.com. Shawn Rhodes here with Mr. Jeff Goldberg. Now, it's been a pleasure serving you today with Jeff. Jeff, let's go out there. Let's make selling bulletproof.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And as I always say, Sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there and make
Mhm.
sales happen.
Let's do it, sir. Thanks.